Snow fell in slow spirals, delicate and relentless, as if the mountain itself were trying to forget the world below. At its foot, where trees clung like forgotten memories to the slope, Clara Whitmore tightened the shawl around her shoulders and adjusted the iron sight of her rifle. It wasn't the snow that bothered her. It was the sound she'd heard minutes earlier. Not a wolf's howl, nor the whistle of wind, but something else. Human. Weak. Hurt. She squinted down the rocky ridge behind her shack, where fresh white powder was already filling the old wagon ruts. That sound had come from there. Most folks would stay inside. Most folks weren't Clara. The chickens clucked nervously in their coop, and her half-blind horse, Juniper, gave a nervous snort as Clara marched past with her rifle slung low. The late afternoon sun had dipped behind the cliffs, casting everything in gray shadow, and the cold began to bite through her boots. But Clara didn't slow. When the mountain called out, it meant one of two things: salvation or trouble. She'd survived enough winters to know either could wear a man's voice. The cry came again, softer now. She followed it, boots crunching over the snow. Then she saw him. A man lay crumpled at the base of a pine, blood soaking his sleeve, his leg twisted unnaturally beneath him. His coat, too fine for this part of the world, was half torn open, revealing a dark waistcoat and a ruined dress shirt. A revolver lay just out of his reach, its silver frame dulled with snow. Clara raised the rifle. "You dead?" The man groaned, his head rolling toward her. "Not yet." She stepped closer, cautious. "You armed?" "Tried," he said weakly. "Didn't go well." "Who shot you?" He hesitated. "Men, with loud mouths and louder guns." "Real specific, stranger." He smiled faintly, then passed out cold. Clara stared down at him. Part of her wanted to leave him there. This wasn't a place to rescue strangers, especially not ones dressed like Eastern bankers and bleeding out in the middle of nowhere. But something in her stirred. Maybe it was his face, weather-beaten, yes, but clean-shaven, eyes like winter sky before they closed. Maybe it was the way his voice cracked, not from fear, but defiance. Or maybe it was the loneliness. Clara sighed and slung her rifle over her back. "Hell's bells," she muttered, grabbing the man under his arms and starting to drag. It took most of an hour. Snow deeper than her knees, wind biting harder the closer they got to the ridge. When she finally shoved the cabin door open with her shoulder, she collapsed beside him on the floor. The fire was barely embers. She tossed wood on it, then stripped off his coat and started cutting the bloody shirt from his arm. Her fingers were numb and her stomach growled, but she worked fast. She washed the wound, wrapped it tight, then splinted the leg with the handle of an old broom. Somewhere between her muttering and pouring whiskey down his throat, the man stirred again. "Name's Clara," she said as she wiped sweat from her brow. "You die, I ain't burying you." Ground's frozen solid. He blinked slowly. "Tell Eli I found it." She leaned in. "Eli who?" But he was gone again, breathing shallowly beneath the blanket she'd thrown over him. Outside, wind howled around the cabin. Inside it was quiet, save for the crackling fire and the soft thud of snow falling from the eaves. She sat by the fire, staring at the man. His hands were calloused, his boots expensive, but scuffed. A man like that didn't end up alone and bleeding in the mountains without a story. Curiosity gnawed at her. She grabbed the coat she'd hung to dry and checked the inside pockets. A leather money clip slid out, bulging, too thick. She opened it and gasped. Dozens of crisp bills. Hundreds. Her hands trembled as she flipped through them. She found more, a folded letter with official stamps, water-damaged but still legible. Hawthorne Holdings. A name she remembered from the postmaster's wall. Mining company? Or railroads? Underneath it, a small black ring, heavy, with an odd insignia etched in silver. Not the kind of thing ranch hands wore. She turned toward him. "Just who the hell are you?" By morning, the stranger was feverish. She fed him sips of broth, poured whiskey over his stitches, and cursed him between every breath. He muttered in dreams, names she didn't know. Vanguard. Doc Stone. He lied. She cleaned and rewrapped his arm, trying not to wonder what kind of man could afford to lose that much money and still have enemies willing to kill him for more. When he finally opened his eyes for real, it was dawn. Golden light filtered through the broken shutters, painting the cabin in streaks of warmth it didn't deserve. He stared at her for a moment. You live here?" "No, I'm just a ghost who brews real good coffee," she snapped. "Drink this." He winced and took the cup she handed him. "I'm Jack. Last name. Wouldn't help you." "Try me." He sipped. "Hawthorne." Her hand froze. "You mean like the—" "Yeah," he said. "Those Hawthorns." "You're lying." "I wish." She sat back slowly. Everything made a bit more sense now. The fine boots. The bills. The fire in the eyes. But none of it explained why he was here. Or who was chasing him. He set the cup down with shaking fingers. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." Clara raised an eyebrow. "You didn't. I dragged you. Big difference." He chuckled softly, then winced. "Can't argue that." Later, she helped him to sit up. He looked out the window at the snow. "How far to the nearest rail line?" 2 days. If you can walk." He nodded. "I have to get there. They think I'm dead. Which is good. Keeps me ahead." "Who's they?" He didn't answer. She sighed, standing. "Well, Mr. Jack Hawthorne, you better heal fast. Because something tells me we've both just made ourselves a whole mess of trouble." And just as she turned, a shadow moved in the snow outside. A horse. A rider. Watching the cabin from a distance. Clara froze. They weren't alone. The rider didn't move for a long time. Clara stood in the narrow space between the window and the cold log wall, watching that distant silhouette through frost-laced glass. Whoever it was sat real still, horse breathing steam into the pale morning air. Not a trader. Not a rancher. They didn't come this high up, not this time of year. No lantern. No wave. No movement. Just watching. Jack stirred behind her. "What is it?" "Company," she said softly. He pushed himself upright with a wince, dragging the blanket around his shoulders. "Just one. For now." Jack went quiet, face pale, eyes hard. "They won't knock. That's not how they work." Clara turned toward him. "You gonna tell me who they are yet, or am I still guessing?" He sighed, running a hand over his unshaven face. "Private security. Hired muscle from back east. I caught them cooking the books on a project out west. Contractors siphoning funds, falsifying maps. They tried to bribe me. I said no. Next thing I knew, I was being hunted like a fox." Her brow furrowed. "So they're not just after your wallet." "No," he said grimly. "They're after what I know, and the key to proving it." He reached into the lining of his coat, pulling out a thin leather case wrapped in cloth. Inside was a small metal cylinder no bigger than a finger, polished and engraved. "Encrypted ledger. Holds every transaction, every bribe, every stolen claim. Proof they'll kill for." Clara didn't like the way that sounded. Proof. Kill. Ledger. None of it felt like words she ought to be tangling with. She was just a girl trying to outlive her past, and maybe, just maybe, make it to spring with both boots and her horse still intact. But here she was. "I should have left you to the wolves," she muttered. He smiled faintly. "You still could." Clara stepped away from a window. "Not now. They'd just follow the blood trail back to me anyway." They spent the day reinforcing what little they had. Clara boarded the front windows and laid broken furniture in front of the door. Jack, still too weak to walk, offered ideas. She found herself listening more than she wanted. He'd been raised in boardrooms, but there was grit under his polish. A survival instinct that mirrored her own. Different worlds, same war. She used her father's old traps to rig the treeline. Hung pans from strings. Set up noisemakers from spent bottles and thread. It wasn't much, but out here, a few seconds warning was the difference between a warning shot and a last breath. At sundown, the rider was gone. By midnight, the bottles clinked. Clara was already up, sitting near the hearth with her rifle laid across her lap. She raised a finger, silencing Jack. The cabin held its breath with her. Crunch. A boot step outside. She moved to the wall, heart pounding. Another crunch. Then a voice, lazy, too polite to be anything but dangerous. "Evenin'," it drawled. "Anyone still alive in there?" Clara didn't answer. I ain't here to cause a mess, the voice continued. Just looking for a man. Mid-30s, well-dressed, might be leaking from a few holes. Jack's hand tightened on his blanket. We got reason to believe he might have stumbled this way. Big reward if you seen him. Bigger trouble if you lie. Clara slid the rifle barrel into the gap in the boarded window and aimed toward the sound. I'm fresh out of company, she called. And if I did see someone, he sure wasn't dressed like any of my business. A chuckle. Ma'am, I admire your independence. Truly. But I'm gonna need to take a look inside, all the same. Don't, she warned. I got 3 men with me. That door opens one way or another. You open that door, she said, voice cold. You'd best have a coffin behind you. There was a pause. A beat too long. Then, retreating footsteps. They didn't come in. Not that night. By morning, Clara found smoke rising from a ridge nearby. A camp. Watchful. Jack sipped his coffee slowly. They're waiting us out. They'll be waiting a long damn time. He glanced at her, admiring and sad all at once. You're a hard woman, Clara. No, she said. I'm just tired of being the soft one. He didn't ask what she meant. He seemed to understand. The next day passed slow, tension mounting with each gust of wind. Jack told her more between sips of broth, how his father had been a bastard, how he'd inherited not just a name, but a mess, and how the mines out west were supposed to be the future. They were hiding gold, Clara. Real gold. Not just stock shares and dreams. Enough to finance a city. And they wanted it off the books. She watched him as he spoke, noticing the anger simmering beneath his calm, the guilt. He wasn't just running. He was fighting. Even if his body had given up, his mind hadn't. That night, she found him awake at the fire, staring at the encrypted cylinder. You ever gonna tell someone what's on that thing? She asked. Depends if I live long enough to matter. Fair. Then he said something she didn't expect. You could come with me. To Durango. Help deliver it. I've got contacts there. Protection. You'd be safe. More than safe. She stared at him, stunned. You offering me money? No, he said quietly. I'm offering you something better. A way out. She turned away. I don't need rescuing. I know. That's why I trust you. Clara didn't sleep much after that. Come dawn, hoofbeats sounded again, closer this time. She stepped outside before the sun could rise, rifle in hand, coat flapping in the wind. 3 men sat on horseback just beyond the frost line. The one in the center, lean, with a red scarf and a mouth like a razor's edge, smiled at her. You're a stubborn thing, he said. We were hoping for a warm welcome. You got the weather for it. I think it's time we settled up, he said. We come real polite. Now we come to collect. Clara leveled her rifle. The man raised his hand. Now, I ain't here to dance. But I ain't leaving empty-handed. That man in your cabin? He don't make it to town. Not alive. You want him? She asked. He nodded. She spit in the snow. Then you come through me. That made him laugh. Not the kind you'd share over a campfire, but the kind you heard before the storm broke. Ma'am, he said, turning his horse, you're in over your head. Maybe, she replied, but I'm still breathing. And that's more than I can say for the next man who steps on my porch. They rode off, slower this time. Inside, Jack stood, bracing himself against the wall. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He watched her a long moment. You're gonna get yourself killed. She looked at him, face unflinching. So will you. But we might buy each other time. His voice broke then, just a little. You're something else, Clara. She stared out the window, jaw tight. Let's just hope that's enough. The fire popped behind them, and far off in the distance, the hawks began to circle. Snow pelted the roof, like fingers tapping out a warning. Clara stood in the center of the cabin, rifle slung across her chest, every sense sharpened. Jack sat near the hearth, pale but upright, the flicker of firelight dancing across his jaw. His leg, though splinted and bound, twitched with nerves he didn't try to hide. Neither spoke. The silence between them was no longer uneasy. It was tactical. She pulled the oil lantern lower and adjusted the wick, dimming the light until the cabin glowed like a fading ember. Outside, the trees creaked under wind pressure, and the faint metallic clink of boot spurs echoed faintly between gusts. They were coming. Clara had grown up thinking fear smelled like fire and iron. Until now. Now it smelled like pine smoke, blood-soaked gauze, and cold sweat. The kind that soaks through a man's shirt long before he admits he's scared. Jack spoke softly. I can take the ledger and go. Draw them off. You wouldn't make it a mile. You could. She cut him off. I'm not letting you die with a noble line hanging in the air like that. This isn't a play, Jack. He fell silent. Outside, the wind howled again, but this time it was broken by a crack. A branch snapped under pressure, or underfoot. Clara moved to the side window and pulled the curtain back a hair. Shapes moved in the darkness. 3, maybe 4. Their outline ghosted in and out with the swaying trees. These weren't just hunters anymore. These were men who'd done this before. She grabbed the pistol from the mantel, checked the chambers. 5 rounds. Loaded. We hold them off here, she said, voice firm. We've got the traps, we've got angles. If they rush the front, we funnel them through the doorway. They'll think it's a quick kill. Jack's eyes met hers. And when they realize it's not, we shoot straighter. A thump on the porch made them both freeze. Then came the voice, different this time. Slower. Measured. Miss Whitmore, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot. It was the red scarf man again. His tone was syrupy, friendly. The kind of sound a man used when his knife was already unsheathed behind his back. I've done a little research on you, he continued. Orphaned in Kansas, survivor of a wagon raid. Settled on land no one else wanted. You're tough, I'll give you that. Real tough. But you don't have to die for a man who'll ride away the second you turn your back. Clara said nothing. Jack stood slowly, leaning on the wall. Let me go, he whispered. You don't have to be in this. You're in my cabin, she muttered. That makes it my problem. Outside, footsteps paced across the porch boards. The man continued. We'll give you a deal, Miss Whitmore. Hand him over, no fuss, no mess. You keep your little life, your shack, even your horse. Clara opened the door. She stood in the threshold, framed in firelight, rifle aimed at his heart. Her voice was quiet. My horse died last winter. The man blinked. Which means you don't know a damn thing about me. The rifle cracked. The man dropped, red blooming from his chest, like a rose opening in fast forward. Chaos exploded. Gunfire shattered the night. 2 men flanked the porch. One took a bullet to the thigh from the trap wire Clara rigged, screaming as he fell into the snow. Jack, using the fireplace poker, struck down the second as he burst through the back door, catching him off balance. Smoke clouded the cabin. Clara's shoulder clipped the doorframe as she pivoted and fired again, one of the riders diving behind the water trough. The last attacker hurled a bottle through the window, flames licking out instantly. Kerosene. The fire roared, feeding on dry timber and wool. Jack limped to the table, grabbed the ledger, and tossed it into the metal stove, slamming the door shut. They don't get this. Flames crawled up the wall. Clara looked around, calculating. She couldn't let the place burn. Not now. Not yet. She grabbed a bucket and doused the nearest blaze, coughing. We need to end this. Jack nodded, wiping blood from his brow. Then we go outside. The last rider, pinned behind the trough, kept firing blindly. Clara slipped out the rear window and circled wide. Her boots crunched softly, masked by the wind and crackle of fire. She kept low, moving like her father taught her, like she was part of the mountain. She came up behind him, steadying her aim. But he turned too quick. His gun fired. She hit the snow, hard. Something hot sliced across her ribs. Her ears rang. She rolled, gasping. The man stepped forward, grinning. Tough little thing, he hissed. Should have taken the offer. A gunshot rang out. His eyes went wide before he dropped, face first into the snow. Behind him, Jack stood, leaning on a splintered post, smoking revolver in hand. He lowered it, exhaled. You all right? Clara nodded, clutching her side. Think he nicked me. They both stood there a moment, surrounded by silence, by smoke, by blood. The fire in the cabin had died down. The snow had turned pink in patches. The mountain wind blew cold and steady. Clara sat down on the porch step, wincing. Jack joined her. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "For bringing this to your door." She stared ahead. "You didn't." "I opened it." He looked at her then. Really looked. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "About Durango. About giving you more than a shack and a worn-out rifle. There's a place for you, Clara. If you want it." She didn't answer right away. Her breath came in slow, sharp bursts. Then, "I never wanted more than peace. And now—" She stared at the distant peaks, the ash drifting like feathers in the wind. "Now I want to finish what they started." Jack nodded. "Then we'll do it together." They sat in silence again, side by side, two scarred souls who hadn't planned on surviving, but did anyway. Above them, the stars began to emerge, one by one, like old friends returning from exile. The road to Durango was not a road at all. It was a tattered ribbon of frozen dirt and jagged stone carved between two cliffs, blanketed in snow and silence. Clara led the mule with one hand, her rifle strapped across her back. Jack sat upright in the cart behind her, wounded but stubborn, wrapped in layers of wool and grit. The encrypted cylinder was tucked beneath his coat, closer than a heartbeat. The fire-scarred remains of her cabin and everything she'd ever known were miles behind them now. They didn't speak much. The silence between them was different now. Not fearful, not cold, just full, like the air before a thunderstorm. At dusk, they made camp beneath a frozen overhang, and Jack finally broke the silence. "You don't have to keep doing this." Clara turned from the fire, eyes reflecting orange in the low glow. "Doing what?" "Carrying this weight for me." She gave a slow smile. "I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I saw what men like them do when no one fights back." Jack watched her for a long moment, then nodded. "I used to think I knew who I was. Thought power came from ownership, names, titles, shares. But you lost everything and still stood between me and a bullet. That's real power." Clara shrugged. "That's just being too stubborn to die." By morning, the mountains opened like jaws around them, the pass narrowing as if the land itself wanted them turned around. But Clara pressed on. Each mile brought them closer to something neither had known how to name: justice, maybe, or something less poetic and far more dangerous. They arrived at the Durango outpost, battered, frostbitten, and bleeding. The rail station was quiet, a few workers hauling crates, steam hissing from a dormant engine. A lone telegraph pole stood like a gallows at the edge of the platform. Jack handed Clara a note. "Give this to Marshal Dalton. He'll be in the courthouse at the far end of the square. And Clara, watch for shadows. If word got out we survived." She nodded once and left without a word. Durango felt too clean, too orderly. Neatly shoveled streets and bright storefronts that didn't match the blood under her nails. Clara moved like a ghost past the baker, the blacksmith, the dressmaker's shop, watching every window, every stranger's face. She wasn't paranoid, she was prepared. The courthouse loomed ahead, pale stone with iron lamps and a brass plaque that hadn't seen tarnish in years. Inside, Marshal Dalton stood beside a potbelly stove, arms folded, badge polished, jaw set hard. A soldier's posture in a lawman's coat. Clara handed him the note. He read it once, then again, his brow tightening. Without a word, he locked the door, turned the sign, and drew the curtains. "You tell him to sit tight," Dalton said. "I'll bring the rest." Clara didn't wait for questions. She left the courthouse at a faster pace than she'd entered. The town felt heavier now, as if someone had felt the shift in the wind. When she returned to the outpost, the cart was empty. No Jack, no pack, no encrypted cylinder. Just a single drag mark in the snow. She dropped everything and ran. The trail was fresh, boots and drag lines, heading west into the yards behind the freight depot. Her heart pounded in her chest like a war drum. She rounded a corner and saw them. Two men. One in a wool coat with his back to her, holding Jack by the collar. The other stood a few feet back, pistol drawn, barrel aimed right at Jack's head. She raised her rifle. "Drop him." Both men turned at once. but Clara was faster. The rifle cracked. The gunman stumbled backward, howling as blood painted the snow. The second man shoved Jack forward and tried to run. Clara fired again. Missed. The recoil bit her shoulder. She ran forward, dropped to her knees beside Jack. He was conscious, but barely. His lip was split, coat torn, breathing shallow. "You came," he rasped. "I always come," she muttered, pressing a cloth to the gash above his eye. Bootsteps thundered from behind. Dalton and 2 deputies emerged from the alley, rifles raised, eyes hard. Dalton barked orders. The wounded man was seized. The other was hauled out from under a wagon 2 blocks away. The encrypted cylinder was found tucked in his coat, still intact. Clara sat beside Jack in the snow as the dust settled, steam rising off her like a horse fresh from battle. Dalton knelt beside them. "We've got what we need. These men will hang." Jack looked up at him. "You need to move fast. The contracts on me don't expire. They'll send more." "Let them," Clara said, voice low and sharp. "Let every one of them come. I'm done running." Dalton gave her a look, half admiration, half warning. "You know, you two could disappear. Take that ledger, sell it to the right buyer. Live the rest of your lives somewhere warm." Jack smiled faintly. "We already made our choice." Later, in the courtroom, the evidence was read aloud. Jack stood on his own 2 feet, hands trembling as he laid bare the lies, the theft, the murder for profit hidden beneath the mining contracts. Clara watched from the back row, hat in her hands, ribs still wrapped tight, bruises blooming like ink beneath her skin. The courtroom was packed. Reporters scribbled. Men paled. Women whispered. The name Hawthorne meant something again, but this time it meant reckoning. When it was over, Jack met Clara on the steps outside. The snow had stopped. The sky was clearing. He held out a small velvet pouch. "What's this?" she asked. "A new key. To the house I bought on the ridge overlooking the valley." She didn't take it right away. "I'm not your prize," she said softly. "I know," he replied, "but maybe I could be yours." They stood in silence. Then she took the key and slid it into her coat. "I'll decide later," she said. They walked together down the courthouse steps, side by side, neither leading, neither following. As they passed the telegraph pole, a boy ran past with a newspaper fresh off the press. Clara glanced down. "Mining tycoon declares war on corruption, with help from mystery woman of the mountains." Jack chuckled. "I suppose that's you." "Suppose so." They didn't stop walking. Behind them, the town buzzed with new rumors, new names, new beginnings. Ahead, the horizon stretched wide in gold, the last snow melting into the thirsty dirt roads that led to somewhere new, and somewhere worth fighting for. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.